Lesson 7 is essentially an extension of Lesson 2.5. It's found on page 77 in your textbook, and it is dividing fractions. So in 2.5, we use these manipulatives to divide our fractions. Today we're going to learn how to, we're actually not going to divide fractions, and I'm going to explain that to you in the second part of this lesson. Okay, so our essential question, how do you divide fractions? Toby and his dad are building a doghouse. They need to cut a board that is 2/3 yard long into 1/6 yard pieces. How many 1/6 yard pieces can they cut with that 2/3 yard? So we're going to divide 2/3 by 1/6 using a number line. So essentially this number line right here is the exact same thing as the plastic manipulatives that we used in 2.5. So this is the number line here. This 1 represents the number line. And then they have 1/3 and 1/3 making 2/3. So 1/3 and 1/3 makes 2/3. I'm going to move this up so you can follow along with the number line. All right, and last, they have 1/6 pieces here. They just did it over the top this time. That's the only difference. So there we have 1/6, and then they have the 3 boxes for our other 3 1/6 pieces. So essentially it's the same thing. I just wanted to represent it in a way that's familiar to you based on the lesson that you did before. So 2/3 divided by 1/6. So we're going to draw a number line, shade to represent the total length of the board. So our board is only 2/3 long. We're going to divide the whole into 2/3. We did, and so we shaded the 2/3. There we go. Show fraction parts that represent the pieces of the board, the pieces that they're going to cut. These are the fraction pieces. Think the number of groups of 1/6 in 2/3. So we have 1, a second 1/6, a third 1/6, and a fourth 1/6. So how many 1/6 pieces do we have? Well, there are 4 1/6 yard pieces in 2/3. Now let's take a second look at this real quickly. So that means 2/3, 1/3, and 1/3 equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 1/6 pieces. In other words, these are equivalent fractions. We could have done this another way, and I'm previewing this so that you are ready for it when we come to this part of the lesson later. 2/3 times 2/2, which is the same as 1, right? It's a form of 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. So 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. They're equivalent fractions. We're going to review that later in the lesson. All right, so here we go. Oh, it's right there. Write an equivalent fraction using a common denominator. So this is another way we can do division, by using common denominators. So we have 2/3 divided by 1/6. That's the original problem. I kind of wish that they'd done it in stages going down instead of across. I think that's a little, visually a little more confusing. So I'm covering it up for right now. So I'm going to take that 2/3, and I want the 3 to be the same value as the 6 here, so that I have a common denominator. The least common multiple, the LCM of 3 and 6 is 6. So 6 is a multiple of both 3 and 6. All right, so 6 is going to be our common denominator. In order to make that 3 a 6, we're going to have to multiply it by 2. So again, 2 over 2. It's a form of 1. We haven't changed the value. Anything you multiply by 1, you're not changing its value. So 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. So now I can do 4/6 divided by 1/6. So 4/6 divided by 1/6 is 4. Remember, this is 4/6. If I divide it into 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 1/6. So 4/6 divided by 1/6 is 4. There's 4 pieces. So there are 4 groups of 1/6 and 4/6. So 2/3 divided by 1/6 is 4. Toby and his dad can cut 4 1/6 yard pieces. All right, that's the first half of this lesson. Please continue with part 2.